Hello, friends. This is Dave Hurwitz, Executive Director at ClassicsToday.com, here to talk to you about the greatest piece of band music of the entire 19th century. I am referring to Berlioz's Grande symphonie funèbre et triomphale. Yes. I mean, that already tells you what the problem with it is. The Grand Symphony, the Grand Funereal and Triumphal Symphony. That's what it's called. It's not the most resonant of titles, certainly not as much fun as the Symphonie Fantastique or some of these other things that he did. Romeo and Juliet, No, it's funereal and triumphal, and that's exactly what it is. Also, it's written for a marching band of anywhere from like 100 to 300 people, which makes things a little bit more complicated in performance, shall we say. But the history of this work on records is really rather depressing, and we're going to get to that in a moment. First, let's talk a little bit about the piece. What did Berlioz write it for, and why? Well, Berlioz composed it in 1840 to commemorate the 10th anniversary of the July Revolution. Now, if you know anything about your French history, you know that the French have more monuments and commemorations built to sort of commemorate defeats than any other place in the world. There's a revolution every 15 minutes. The barricades go up, everybody gets killed, and then they commemorate. They commemorate and commemorate and commemorate. It's like, that's what the Arc de Triomphe is, of course. And they commemorate it by calling it either gloire or triomphe or, something that sounds very good, even though the circumstances were really very bad. It's like, oh, we lost another one? Slap another plaque on the Arc de Triomphe. That's French history in the 19th century. So what happened in the July Revolution of 1830? Well, what happened was that the king, who I think was Charles X, it was the Bourbon king, was overthrown by Louis Philippe and the House of Orleans. And he would sort of hang out there till he got overthrown in 1848. It's all very, very exciting. And so on the 10th anniversary of the accession of Louis Philippe to the throne, there was a commemoration. And the commemoration was, of course, the victims of the Revolution of 1830, and this was in 1840, and the Ministry of the Interior commissioned Berlioz to write this enormous sort of commemorative work that would be played while they're marching back and forth on the way to the Bastille, where they were sticking another plaque on the Bastille. And so he wrote the Grande symphonie funèbre et triomphale, which he was very pleased with, in which, the performances apparently went very well. And the work consists of 3 movements. There is a gigantic opening funeral march, which is wonderful. It's wonderful. And then an oraison funèbre, a funeral oration. And the speaker is a solo trombone. It's really very interesting. And then, of course, the apotheosis, the triumphant apotheosis at the end, which is just gobs of fun. And then after the initial performance, Berlioz added optional string parts and, of course, a chorus to the finale, which I can kind of do without. The opening words of the chorus, of course, are gloire, glory, 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 glory. And, and the words are basically whoop-de-doo, we're French, glory, glory, glory. That's all you need to know. It's just a wonderful work. It really is. But it doesn't get performed very often because of the forces required to do it justice, and because it's kind of an odd title and an occasional work, and it's a band piece, and, it's got all those things against it. And in a regular symphony concert, you just need to have just crap loads of extra wind players. Berlioz suggested at least 100 extra wind players if you have a normal orchestra, and more than that if you don't have a normal orchestra. And it's not easy to do. So let's talk about what he wrote it for, because it's quite fascinating. I have my miniature score here, which has the actual parts here, the forces required, which are so tiny that I have my magnifying glass right here. So let's see what they are. 4 piccolos, 5 flutes, 5 oboes, 5 E-flat clarinets, small clarinets, 14, a total of 26 clarinets in 2 choirs of clarinets, 2 bass clarinets, 8 bassoons, 1 contrabassoon, 12 horns, 8 trumpets, 4 cornets, 8 trumpets, 4 cornets, 6 plus 10 trombones, 1 bass trombone, 3 ophicleides. Now the ophicleide was is it 3 or is it more? Wait a minute. It's let me see here. Yeah, 3 ophicleides. Yes, 3 ophicleides. No, 6, pardon me. 6 ophicleides. The ophicleide was replaced by the tuba, and that's all you need to know about it. It was sort of a bass brass instrument of some sort that was a hopeless failure as a bass brass instrument, and so it was replaced by the tuba. But this takes 6 ophicleides, and then, let's see, oh my God, 8 snare drums in 2 sections, a pair of timpani, if you can find them, 3 pairs of cymbals, 1 bass drum, 1 tam-tam, and then strings, 15 cellos, 10 basses, and violins and the choir and all that stuff in the apotheosis movement. That's a lot of stuff to get together, and that explains why we don't hear it very often. And also the fact that, like I said, because it's a marching band occasional work, there's this idea that because it's a ceremonial piece, it's not good music, but it is. It's very good music. The last movement is kind of populist and has kind of a trashy, rah-rah, cheerleader, fight song kind of tune, but there's nothing wrong with that. And the opening funeral march is just magnificent, absolutely magnificent. It has been performed and recorded, probably less than 10 times. I don't know. Not very often and not very well. I mean, I have here, let's get rid of the bad ones first. There are at least 3 that come to mind immediately, 3 or 4. Charles Dutoit, boring. He did it. It's duller than ditch water. And then there was the Wallace collection on Nimbus, a bunch of brass players. It sounds terribly small scale and undernourished. And this one, which you'd think would be wonderful, French Wind Band Classics on Chandos, featuring Timothy Rainish with the Royal Northern College of Music Wind Orchestra and Joe Alessi playing a fabulous trombone in the funeral oration. Horrible. Just awful. Awful. The apotheosis of awfulness. How they could do a recording that is this boring and unidiomatic without just a trace of that wonderful, wonderful French swagger. It's the kind of bravado this music has that only people who always lose could possibly put into their music, It's delusional bravado. And that's how you have to play this music, with delusional bravado. That's what it needs. So, who are the most delusional performances? Well, let's see here. I have here 4, which are tolerable, and not all of them are available. It really just sucks. The classic version was this one. This featured the Musique des Gardiens de la Paix in the Paris Battalion. That is the French National Guard Band, under Désiré Dondaine. This is the one that's in the Berlioz edition, which we're going to talk about on Warner. And, he actually, I think, recorded it twice. But this one, it was on Calliope, and if you can find it, lots of luck to you. It has wonderful other pieces. It's got Florent Schmidt's Dionysiac and Kirkland's chorales for popular festivals, and Fauré's Chant Funéraire, which I guess is different from a chant funèbre. Don't ask me how. But, the thing about this is that it's real, authentic French delusional woodwind players. And I mean, their intonation is kind of scruffy, and their sound is kind of squealy, and it's wonderful. It's just wonderful. Now, this same group, the Musique des Gardiens de la Paix, did the piece Oh, this is no, the Orchestre de Harmonie de la Garde Républicaine. Pardon me, it's a whole different delusional bunch of French wind players. And here it is. Oh, look, there's a picture of them. There they are. Now, this one was on Astray, Naive, and it's conducted by Francois Boulanger. And again, good luck finding it. I mean, they do also the March to the Scaffold from the Symphonie Fantastique and Roman Carnival, and the Hungarian March from the Damnation of Faust in band arrangements. Lots of fun there. But again, finding it is difficult. And I just am so distressed at all of this because, it's just not fair. We can't find these anymore. And Dondin here, I think he did it twice, once with the chorus, once without. He remade it, but you can't. I was looking. I was looking on Amazon. I was all over the place looking for these recordings. And it's just a disaster, an absolute disaster trying to find them. One that you may be able to find, and this one is very recommendable, and nobody mentioned it because it's real, but it's really cool, is Christoph Eschenbach with the Czech Philharmonic. They are great wind players. You get the more La Mort de Cleopatra, Cleopatra's Death, with Dunya Vezovic, the excellent mezzo-soprano. But this is a really hot performance, and I just want to play you a little bit of it so you get a sense of what it ought to sound like when you got people who are going to play it with the right kind of delusional intensity. Here, listen to this. Hot stuff, right? I mean, that opening funeral march is just brilliant. Absolutely brilliant. Just a fun, fabulous piece of music. But probably the one you'll find most easily, and thank God it's still out there, and the best one all around, really. It does include the chorus, if you care, but was Colin Davis. It's on here. It's on this sort of Berlioz Great Orchestral Works, but or you also get the Symphonie Fantastique and Harold in Italy, his London Symphony Orchestra recording, which I think are his best ones. And it's a marvelous performance. And it's you have so little choice. What are you going to do? But Davis really nails it. He really does. And, it's also coupled because it makes a wonderful filler for the Berlioz Requiem. And so Decca put it on one of its Decca Originals twofers with the Colin Davis Berlioz Requiem, which is also one of the best performances out there of that work. Not the best, that's Munch, but, we'll get to that. That's another talk. But at least you can get a good performance of the bloody thing. And that's what really matters, because otherwise, there really aren't any. And it's scarifying how few there are. Berlioz is one of those composers. He's still, even today, in this day and age, he's a bit of a specialized taste. He is so quirky, so original, so just kind of, himself. And also for his period, so unashamedly intensely grandiose and romantic and emotional. Today, I think we're probably a little bit embarrassed by the very excess that he represents. But it was a true historical moment, and he was an unbelievable musical genius who we'll be talking about a lot more. And the Grande Symphonie funèbre et triomphale is a masterwork of wind band music, and in a medium which at the time, the stuff that people wrote was really garbage. There's terrible, terrible music for band, but not Berlioz. Berlioz put his heart and soul into everything he did, including his music for marching band, and this is simply the greatest exemplar of that in the entire 19th century. So do try to get the Colin Davis or the Eschenbach, or if you can find one of these French ones, of the Grande Symphonie. You will not be sorry. It is so much fun. So keep on listening, folks. Thank you for joining me. All the best.